So here she is, almost finished. So what I did, no, Ziggy, no, we're not doing that. So what I did is, you can see I've kind of feathered out the color a little bit on the sides just to, and kind of fluff her up at the top. And I kind of set the eyes just a little bit deeper than they are. And but pretty much I left everything else as is, very similar to the original painting. I went a little bit softer with the specks and the dots all around. I just felt too many would be distracting. So one thing I would like you to do is, I would like you to work a little bit smaller when you start, because I realized I had done one earlier, and let's see, I'll show it to you. And I had started bigger, but I just felt that it made the painting too crowded, even though she does fit completely. I kind of like it better when she has a little bit of room to breathe. So just, go a little bit smaller than you think you want to be. And as far as the colors, I wanted to show you this. This is kind of how I first started. So what you want to do, and this is a reminder for everyone, and always even a reminder, to myself, is that the consistency needs to be of very weak tea. Just think about that, very watered down tea, and it's going to have the tint of color. That's really where you want to start, if not lighter. And then from that, you're going to go darker in some areas. But this is kind of your average place where you want to be, the consistency of weak tea. And this here is kind of showing just the very basic structure that we're going to have. So we're going to have like kind of this squared off egg shape for the head. So it's a little bit narrower at the top, even though we're not seeing the entire top of the head. You can tell from the forehead that it's going to be a little bit narrower here, and it's going to get wider at the bottom. So think of the neck as almost like a triangle that goes into the head. Shh, no. And as far as the beak, I just kind of broke it down into a couple shapes. It's really simple, but this is going to be helpful in kind of determining the width and the length. So the lower part has a little bit more, it's almost even, but maybe a little bit more length to it. And what we want to be mindful of when we start is to mark out the areas that we have some whites in, like the eyes, and some of the highlights in the face. And we're going to talk about that. And the flowers are just very simple. They're, just kind of like drop-ins of color. And, you can have them in different places and different colors. They don't have to be in that same particular arrangement. So we are going to start. So again, one of the things I'm going to be using, which typically are not in a set. I love pink, so I'm always collecting these different pinks. So I really like this one. Some of you I know have already gotten it. It's called Opera Rose, and it's a very, very bright pink, and it's great for things like cheeks and when you want that brightness. And this one is called Permanent Rose. It's a little bit softer, and the rose madder, it just almost has a little bit of red in it. I will show them to you when we put them out. So these are from a tube, and what I do is, I typically, if it's just for me, I would not clean out my palette until it gets impossible. And the reason is sometimes you might find colors that are still there that you could use in your next painting. And also because if I'm pouring out of a tube, nothing happens to it. It dries, you just add water, and it becomes brand new again. So I'm going to put some of this Opera Rose, which is very bright. So ideally I would keep that afterwards and then just use some of it. And I'm going to put, we don't have a lot of pinks, but I'll show you kind of what they do. And this is Permanent Rose. And if you need the names for these, just email me. And this is the rose madder, which is a little bit deeper. Okay, so these are kind of the extras that we don't have in our box. And what I'm going to do is I am going to start off, I'm going to draw the duck because I want to plan out the areas where the beak is going to be and the eyes. So I'm not going to do a full wet on wet at this point. So I'm just going to mark it. And to mark it, I am going to create somewhat of a, I'm going to take some brown. And what I want to do is I just want to create a color that will kind of mesh with it. So what I'm going to do, because I have a lot of yellows, I'm just going to take a little bit of yellow and just add it to it. And again, I want to very watered down. So this is almost going to be like my pencil. And I'm going to leave some space from the top because I want to leave room for those flowers and those leaves to kind of play around. And again, like I told you, I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller than I think I want it to be. And then you can always add dimension to it. But with watercolor, if you started too big and you want to go smaller, it's kind of harder to do that because you will have color that you have to get rid of. So I'm just going to, you know, just as light as you can have this. I'm using a medium round brush. Again, I'm going a little bit darker so you can see what I'm doing, but you know, go light. It just needs to be light enough to where you can see it. And I'm going to stop here. And the beak is kind of starts in the middle of the face, kind of flares out. This is the widest point over here, just under the nostrils, and then turns in. And it has a little roundedness. Again, at this point, does not need to be that detailed. I'm going to put in, so again, your lines should be light enough, loose enough to where they're not creating a border or an outline, because you're going to have, you know, the feathers coming out, you're going to have other things in there. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark out the eyes. So the eyes, if you look at the widest point in the beak, they are almost along that line. If you were to draw a line from there to the eye, that's kind of where they start, see? And I'm just going to just outline them so they are kind of longer than they are wide. And again, on the other side, I'm going to use this as a guide, and they kind of start here. And they start just a little bit higher than where the beak starts. And again, as long as you're within that range, you can always fix that later. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to soften these edges. I just took water on my brush just because I don't want to have any outlines. Okay, and in the same manner, we can just place the flowers. We're going to have a little bit of wet on wet here since we wet that, but that is totally fine. It'll just show us where they're going to be. Got the leaves. Again, just do these loose. You're just kind of mapping out your painting. You could add more or less if you wanted to. Okay, so I do have everything that I need. So if we look at the yellows in here, we can see that the yellow is going from almost like a lemon yellow. You can see that down here at the neck, and it's going into a golden, and then it goes into oranges. And in some area, it's getting some pinks. In some areas, it's even getting a touch of green. I suggest if you're going to introduce green into it, just make sure your water stays clean because you don't want it to dominate. It's just a slight accent. And then there's the pinks kind of down at the cheeks. Of course, we have the pink in the beak, and we have some of the purples in the flowers. And what I like to do when I'm starting a painting is I like to see, like I saw the purple flowers and I was wondering, like, where else is there purple in the painting, just to create some balance? And you can see that there's some purples and the eye, which is really cool. You can see a little bit here and in the very deep area. So whenever you have a color, and you could even use some of it in the nostrils, whenever you're using a color, always make sure that it's echoed somewhere, even in small quantities in your painting, and that will just help create balance. It's something only the artist knows is happening, but to the viewer, it would look balanced. It will just have that element of professionalism that only us artists know how to do. So I'm going to do a slight wet, okay? And I say slight because I do have areas that I want to be mindful of. So I'm going to wet the areas that are not the beak and the eyes, and I'm going to be kind of just a little bit mindful with the highlights. So again, Catherine, this is for you. Just, you want it to be just wet enough to where the paper is moist. And if you kind of just, you know, slide your paper a little bit, you'll be able to see if it's shiny, it's good. If you see water running, like I do here, you just want to pull it. So these round brushes, they're like a mop. They should, you know, pick up the water. You don't want any puddles. If you have puddles, it's going to do something completely different, which, I mean, in some cases might be desirable, but it gives you much less control. So again, your paper should feel wet, but should not be puddled. And again, this part depends very much on the kind of day we're having. When it's hot, this is going to dry very quickly, and you will want to probably replenish it as you work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the deep colors, almost the yellow rust colors that we see around here. So I'm going to take yellow. I'm going to take kind of the golden yellow. I'm not doing the lemon yellow at this point. And I'm going to take, if you have kind of like a rust brown in there, if you don't, you can use an orange or try a red. I'm gonna mix that. And I'm gonna put this down. I'm gonna just drop it in some of the key areas that I'm seeing it. And feel free to use a smaller brush if you want. Okay, so I put that in. Obviously, it's very strong, and it looks strong because there's nothing else in there yet. And what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to take just some plain yellow, a little bit more water, and I'm going to drop it right next to it. So what it's going to do, it's going to play around a little bit with that rust color, but it's going to also go out and be its own color. So up here, it's a little bit softer. So I'm just going to take water because I still have color on my brush. And there's a highlight here that I'm going to try to work around. And again, I'm just working with water because I do have a lot of color here. And anywhere you see a highlight, just skip that. It is going to get some of, whenever you see it lighter, just take some water and just kind of move it around. So like I was telling you, what I wanted to do is I wanted to give it just a little bit more texture for the feathers. So I'm just going to pull this out, you know, just gently, just doesn't have to have any precision to it. Just pull it out. Same thing on the other side, because you can see the depth of color is in the kind of the areas that are set in a little bit, like around the beak. There is some white here, so I'm just gonna, and if you accidentally have too much color like I do over here, I want that highlight under the eye. I'm just gonna take a tissue, pick it up gently. Don't rub because it'll scratch up the paper. Again, going back to the yellows. I'm just gonna fluff it out a little bit over here. I'm gonna do the same thing with the neck. I do still have that rust here, so I'm going to take some of that yellow. See, this is almost dry. If it feels too dry to you, you can just wet it a little bit. And as we move down in the neck, it's acquiring a little bit more pinks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this bright pink. I'm just going to take very little. I put some water and I'm just going to drop it in up here with the yellow. So when you're dropping in color, try to, like, I want the pinks here, but I don't want them to start suddenly. So I'm just starting a little bit higher up. Let it mix in a little bit with that rust and that.
Noelle, which pink are you using? Noelle?
The opera rose. Yeah. Take some more yellow and just think I can have the pink show a little bit more. And then I'm just going to pull it down again, let it fluff out a little bit. You'll get the bonus of like the feather texture. And over here, I'm starting to get, do I have somebody? So over here, we're getting a little bit of that lemon yellow, and the lemon yellow is going to be this really bright kind of acid yellow up here. I'm gonna take it again. I want it here, but I'm gonna start it off here so it kind of doesn't start suddenly. Adding some water. This is a color you kind of want to use with caution because it is extremely bright. So, you know, I think just a little bit of it goes a long way. Again, I'm going to take some of the yellows and just go in. I'm still using the opera rose over here, but you can use any pink or you could use a red if you wanted to. And again, you know, this is the kind of painting that if you did it all with the golds and yellows, it's still going to be fine. But I think that the drops of pink are giving it kind of a nice color balance with the other pinks in there. So we're going to move higher up over here. And another color that would be also nice to use is going to be this color over here, like an ochre, which is, has a little bit more of a brown to it, almost like almost like a mustard. I'm going to take it in, and again I'm using the golden yellow, and I'm still using this little bit of rust color. And then again, what you will notice with fluffing it out to get the feathered effect. I mean, the artist that did this piece does not really have that, but I think it will be super sweet to have that as an extra. What you will notice is some pigments are just stronger than others. So this rust really goes a long way. You just need very little bit of it if you do have that color. Or it's like a sienna, it could have different words, but you know, just go by what the color looks like. You can also mix them on the palette if you want. So I think we have kind of, oh, there's a little kind of dip over here. Right before the beak starts, and I'm going to put just a drop of opera rose just so that it connects with it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the beak. Now, when you get to smaller areas, I mean, you can still do wet on wet, but it could be a little trickier. So, you know, I would just start with a very watered down color. So I'm going to show you kind of the other pinks that I have. And just for a second, I'm going to just show you on my paper what they do. So this is the opera pink, which is kind of the brightest one. Shh, stop it. And this is the permanent rose, I believe. You can see it's bright, but it doesn't have kind of that acid quality. And this is, no, wait, and this is Rose Madder, which has a little bit more of a deeper red to it. And depending on how, you know, how light you go, you are going to get a really nice range of pinks. And these are great. If you do portraits, you really want to have some separate pinks from the set. Very few sets will come with that. Okay, so depending on what you have, I'm going to start with the one that's kind of in between, which is not the bright. I have to check. I think this one is the Rose Madder, but I will have to, I confuse those two. The Opera Rose I can always tell. And what I'm going to do, so I'm very watered down here, and I'm just going to fill in that area. And I'm going to leave out any big highlights that I see. There's almost like a Y shape. And also there is some white that is around the nostrils. So I'm just going to take some water. I'm just going to kind of lift some of that up. You can take a tissue, just make it really small, and just, because I do want some white circling that. Okay, so I'm going to go to my brighter pink, which I love. I'm going to drop it in. So I do have wet, but it's kind of in controlled areas. So and again, I'm not going to put it everywhere, just to kind of bring out some of the areas. Okay, and since I have my pinks out, I'm going to put the little pinks in the cheek. And I'm just taking it like just kind of watered down, light, and just let it drop in. This is still damp, so it's going to give, you know, a semi-wet on wet effect. And there's a little bit up here. Again, when in doubt, and if you're still not sure how strong your color should be, go lighter. You can always add to it. And if it, you know, there's several things you can do. And if it's too thick, you can just mop it up and just release it on your cup. Okay, so I'm going to put in some of the pink roses, and there's a big one in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it a nice wash. And we do have some smaller ones over here. And like on this one, we can see a stronger color in the middle. So I'm going to use a slightly darker pink and just drop it. I'm going to go up here and drop it in. I'm going to work on the purple flowers a little bit. Like I've mentioned before, I don't have a true purple in here for some reason. It's more reddish, so I'm going to just take a little bit of blue to get that more purple color. That's probably something I should be buying in a tube. But I'm not a purple person, so I mean, I will use it as a minimal. I rarely would choose to have it be a dominant color in a painting. Again, if you love a certain color, you know, I would invest in different variants of it, and that way you can really play up the color. And that's eventually how you get a signature color when you're working, because you start really putting a lot of detail into a specific color. And this one in between seems like a mix of pink and the purple. So I'm going to do that. And the one on top of it is almost like a peachy color. So I'm actually going to take some of that rust along with some of the pink and just make a very watered down version. Needs more orange. It does have a nice big drop of like a really deep golden color. I'm just going to put that in. And also I'm seeing this color in some other areas, so I'm just going to put it down. And on this one, instead of, you know, kind of splashing the color, because to get big dots like that, you would have to have a very big brush. You would probably need, you know, a brush at least like this big to do that. So, and it's very hard to control, you know, for anyone. So I'm kind of doing that those dots with kind of placing them where I want them. Just gonna kind of fine tune some of those little areas. You can see she's already starting to have a lot of personality. Now, what I'm going to do, because I'm going to work with the greens, I'm going to get a fresh water. Because if the oranges and the pinks and the yellows kind of mix, my water has turned orange over here. It's kind of the combination of all of them. You know, the green is going to completely take down the brightness of those colors. So it's best if you have the blues or even the purples. I might even use a separate one. So I'm going to work on some greens. And last time, if you were with us, we worked a little bit on greens, and we talked about green rarely being a color that is like just ready to use in your box. I mean, this one here is not bad. But I feel if I just add a touch of brown to it, or even this rust, it's going to give me just a more olive color that just looks a little bit more like the color I want. I can still use it in plain form, but not everywhere. So I'm going to start putting down the leaves. And see, this is another reason why, you know, it's kind of good to have that space on top so you can have them just kind of play around. This one is still a little bit wet, but I think it's fine. It seemed like most of the greens in here are kind of the same green. And even with, you know, any green that you have, you can also add, you know, a touch of yellow to it. Give it a more kind of grassy color. And while I have these greens, I'm going to put the flecks I have out here. And you can extend, like I just feel we need a little bit more of these over here. Anywhere else you feel that you want to add more leaves, you can do that. And don't feel that you have to have the same green all throughout, or you have to, when you mix the color, when you remix it, that it has to be exactly the same green. It does not have to. Okay. Okay. See how dry this is before I define. Okay, so I'm going to start with the eyes. I kind of wanted to start over here with the beak, but I'm going to wait a little bit because it's not completely dry, and I'm going to be using, just a little bit of line work just to give it more definition. So I'm going to start with the eyes. So the first thing I can see with my eyes is that they're not level. So the very first thing I want to do is I want to level them. And I think that this one is probably too high. So I'm going to take my brush and I'm just going to put in a little bit of yellow over here. Kind of just bring it down a little bit. Okay, so it's a little bit lower. I need to get rid of some of this. And, that's not, unusual to happen, because when you're first starting, I was just making sure that I carved out a space for the eyes. I wasn't, being precise or anything. So what I'm going to do is I want to mix kind of a grayish greenish color, which I think will outline the eyes nicely. So I'm going to take a little bit of green over here. If you have a Payne's gray, which is kind of like a shading gray, you can take some of that. If you don't, you can take a little bit of brown and a little bit of blue. And it will almost give you the same color. See, that's almost the same. Either one will do. And with a thin brush, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start shaping the eyes. So I'm going to work on the insides over here. And whenever you work on eyes, or whenever you work on ears, or anything that is two, you want to work a little bit on the right, a little bit on the left, a little bit on the right, a little bit on the left. Don't spend too much time on one eye and then go to the other one, because they will have a slightly different treatment. So, and then they will look different. So just make sure whatever you do. So I'm just going to start with the inner line, and I'm going to do the same on the other side. And I'm looking to see if they are, this one is slightly lower with the line.
The head is slightly curved in the photograph.
It is, yeah, it's a little bit. So
I sketched mine out with the curve.
Yeah, what it means is that, one is going to, but it's a very slight curve. So if you have it or you don't, it's really fine. But if you are, kind of emphasizing that curve, you want to make sure that the eyes follow that as well. Okay. So now I'm going to start just giving it a little bit more shape. It's almost a straight line on this side. And then again on the other side. And try to see where the highest point is, which is over here. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to outline where the white area is, that strong highlight in the eye. And I'm going to outline it so I don't go into it. There's one here. And the other one kind of goes in the other direction. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to put in just the basic eye color, which is kind of like a deep green blue. So I'm going to take some blue. I'm actually using that green that I had. And I'm going to draw a line. Because if you can see, it has the colored part, and you see the white of the eye, and then we see kind of that lower lid. Okay, they're very small areas. I mean, if they overlap, it's still going to be fun. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. I'm just going to outline color area, and then I am going to kind of fill that in. Again, I'm going to keep it light because some parts are light, and I'm just going to darken as I go along. So this eye is a little bit higher with kind of that slight tilt that it has. And then this one here is going to be really dark, especially at the top, but I do have light colors at the bottom, so I'm going to put them in. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I want to create a really very dark color. Of course, you could always use black, but I try to avoid using black, especially this is such a soft palette that I don't want the black to get on anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some brown, the very dark brown. I'm going to take the darkest green. I'm going to take the darkest blue, all the really dark colors except for the black. I'm going to take this very deep red that I have, almost like a purple. So what I have is a really dark color, but it's not black. It's a little bit too blue, so I'm just going to put more brown just to. So this is kind of the color that I'm getting. So it looks like a black, but it's actually a mix of all those colors. And I'll show you, like, if I added water to it, you can see what it's going to turn into. Okay, so I'm going to use a very thin brush. My very thin brush, where did it go? I'm using a very thin brush that kind of has a long bristle to it. And again, remember that these very thin brushes, they don't hold a lot of color. So you're going to have to go constantly. And the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go on the inside. And I'm going to start defining that eye. And when I get here, I'm going to just kind of flip it out a little bit. And I'm all about the eyelashes. So my eyelashes are a little bit exaggerated. Again, I'm taking this really dark color. And what I'm doing here is I am shaping. So don't just go over the lines that you have. Make sure that you look closely so that you can get any little areas that you did not before. And then I am going to start filling in wherever I'm seeing that really dark color. And with details like this, just, you know, take your time. Just go very slowly. And you can see getting this contrast, I'm already getting a lot of three-dimensional quality. Same thing over here. And on the left one, we're seeing it just is getting a lot more shaded areas. I'm going to pull it down a little bit. Going to go to the other eye. See, I'm not spending too much time in one eye. And this really is the only part of this painting that kind of just needs some detail and attention, precision. So what I'm going to do after I did this is I'm going to take that same brush and I am just going to put water and I'm just going to pull some of that color down because it's still dark, but it's not as dark as those deep areas. So again, just water. And I'm just pulling it out. Again, the other side also. Again, this other side is a little bit darker. And because I put purple in that mix, I'm already seeing some of that in here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit more purple, just separate purple. And I'm going to drop it in here. It's a very, very small thing to do, but it will really balance out the other purples that are in the painting. I'll take just a little bit more purple in here. And take a little bit on this area. And we can see a little bit of purple in that lower lid. And again, if you are, you know, at this point, you've been doing this for a while, I highly recommend that you get these very thin brushes because it's hard to do this kind of detail if you don't have very thin brushes. And, you know, if you are able to go to an art store, because honestly, even for me, when I mean, the brushes that I buy online, I will buy if I had bought them before, because I just can't tell when they tell me that's point this and point that. I kind of physically have to see it. So, and I'm just gonna take some of these lines that just go down into there. So you can see her eyes have really started to pop. Since I have this dark color, I'm going to go back up. I'm just going to deepen them a little bit more in some areas. And at this point in the detail of the eye, you can go and take a little bit of black, but you don't want to use it as your main color, and just put it in there and just very slightly let it, very gently, and get those eyelashes in. Again, just taking very little bit bit of black. And going in just the absolute darkest areas. I'm not putting it everywhere. And then I'm pulling it out. And showing the eyelashes. And just pull them out. You want it to be feathered, so your brush does not have to be loaded. And see, this is kind of the key to painting the eyes and making them, you know, kind of come to life, is you just have to work on them very slowly, just watching all the, because eyes are also very reflective. So you're going to have many, many, many shades and different highlights in there. Okay, since we have this really deep color that we created earlier, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the nostrils. Kind of like a oval shape, irregular oval shape. And it seems to have kind of a rim around it, but it's more kind of reddish brownish. So I'm gonna take some brown and just add it to that red or pink that we have. It's just gonna be kind of a light color. And I'm just going to put a very thin rim around it. And what I might do later is I might pick up some of the color that's in here, have it be more white, but I think it's fine. So again, I'm gonna go to that brownish pinkish color that I did, and I'm gonna start putting a little bit of detail in the beak. I'm going around, and I'm not outlining, I'm just kind of showing the parameters where it stops. So my lines are not, you know, steady all the way through. In some areas, this this definition is a little bit darker, so we can do that in just a minute. I'm just going to fill this little area here with some of that golden brown. So I'm going to go back to this color, and I want it to be just a little bit darker. I'm going to take some brown, and that is way too brown. Take just a touch of blue too. That would look a little bit more grayish brown. You can see it's darker over here. We have this slight definition here, and on this side, and here it's kind of getting to be a little bit more brown. And down here we're seeing just some slight. And since I have this brown, I'm going to use it a little bit here in the eye area where I'm seeing it. I realize we're almost out of time. So really what you would need to do next is just start going back and revisiting the areas and, kind of trying to see, what needs a little bit more, stronger color, maybe a little bit over here in some areas. Pull it out. But for the most part, she is finished. It's not a very detailed piece. I think just adding kind of just feathering out the sides. This will give it just a little bit more of a finished look. So again, to do the kind of the feathering, just go on the inside, put the color, and just kind of pull some of it out. So the ends are feathered. They're not like a thick, so put the color and just pull it out. You could even add a little bit of water. Put the color in, a little bit of water, and feather it. And I would say some of the flowers, can use a little more definition. And a little will go a long way. Put a little bit of blue. And also for the leaves, I would just maybe just the tips of them, just work from the tips in. And maybe if you wanted to add a little bit of these little specks, again, I'm going to show you, like if you wanted to do the really big ones, you're going to need a big brush and a lot of water to create those bigger ones. Even still, I don't think they look as good as, so I'm going to just touch them up a little bit. Maybe just give her a little bit more rosy cheeks. Oh my goodness, she is so cute. These little, flecks of colors, they're a great balancing, addition to, like I felt this kind of looked a little low here. So, and you can even do it just, just taking, some green and just even make them look like small little leaves. And there she is. Okay, so okay, you can unmute yourself. Looking forward to seeing them. Anybody want to show me? Oh, Lisa, she's so cute.
Super cute. Super cute.
She is super cute. Anybody else want to show me?
Let's see.
No?
It's a work in progress.
Yeah,
Okay.
it really is. It really, really
Okay.
is.
So,
She's
just,
a work in progress. See?
oh, she's cute. She's very cute. Carol, are you going to show me?
Oh,
Oh,
that's sweet.
wow.
Cute.
Oh, Carol, that is
They're so
really
cute.
good. No, and you did a great job. Your portraiture skills are definitely showing in that. So again, just just a reminder is that even though this is a paint along, I work very fast, mostly because I want to cover everything, and I want to give you something to think about and work with throughout the week. And just remember that these classes are recorded, and you can find a repeat of them on the HCRJ YouTube channel. So just don't feel that you have to cover the entire ground of what I covered. But I think the idea of just working with a very pastel and light color palette is very useful when you're getting into watercolors, because it forces you. I mean, you're not putting in reds, you're not putting in, so it's all kind of just staying soft and just, with the focus being on those deep eyes. So I hope you enjoyed it, because I just think that was so much fun to paint.
Loved it.
Good,
Very
good, great. Sharon, how did you do?
It just looks weird, and I couldn't get the darkness that you talked about with the eyes with the blue-green. It came out kind of brown. I don't like it
Okay.
at all. See, it looks weird.
No,
I
it
don't know
doesn't.
what I did.
No,
wrong.
it doesn't look weird. It just looks, so what you need to do is I would go back to kind of the forehead and put more of the golds, because right now the eyes are just standing out because you have nothing else on in that area.
Okay.
Sometimes putting down all the ground colors just helps you see what you're doing. And also, if a color is not working out, dump it and try again with a new set of colors. To get that really dark color, you need to use the dark colors in your palette, but most likely one color is going to dominate. So if the color still looks greenish, try to add a little bit of brown. Try to add something that just activates so that you can get a slightly different color. It's honestly, color mixing is a matter of practice, because first of all, we all have different sets. The pigments are going to be different. And also the amount of paint, even if I tell you, we have the exact same set, I tell you, take this color, put it in, you're not going to pick up exactly the same amount of color as I am, even if we're using the same brush. So it just becomes a matter of handling the materials and just trusting your eye and looking to see when it gets right. So, but again, this was fun. So next week we're going to do pencil. So it'll be kind of laid back and just work on some drawing skills. And I hope you continue to work throughout the week on some things. Feel free to send them to me, and I will. Any questions? Anyone? Nope. Nothing.
Thank you so much. It was fun.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
thank
I'm
you.
glad. I'm
Thank
glad.
you.
Thank you. Okay, be safe, everyone. See you next week.